Hi Krissy, I hope you're well. Okay, so today is spreadsheet day, and basically there are four tabs, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the one we're going to be mostly looking at. And it just goes down, get year on year, it makes changes here and there, and continues and continues. These little red things on the right are recessions. There you go, there's another one. And it continues and continues all the way from 2024 to 2080, right at the bottom. Okay, now I'm bound to have made some mistakes here. And every time anyone finds a mistake in it, it'll make them think, well, you know, there's going to be mistakes all over the place. So we really need to check this, and you've been very good with the spreadsheets on the Word documents, so I imagine you should be just as good at this. This is very important because this really does do something that no one else has done before, if it's correct, which I'm pretty sure it is now, especially given the reserve rate technique that is currently used in the US and Europe and in a lot of places. Okay, so these two here, these two tabs, these are the software that I want ‐ Έρevenue to make. And we have two. Basically, one is, as we've seen before, and two is the controller. And this will all become apparent, but we're not really looking at these two mostly. Today is mostly about this one here, Res Manual 4 2024 to 2080, which the data from which is used over here. We go over to here and we start to go down to the right, and this is looking at the amount of houses built and the amount of people housed. Over here we start to see these figures here, which are taken from, it's taken from the left somewhere. No, there we go, it's taken from there. Where after here is taken from this spreadsheet. Okay, I better explain that in a little bit more detail. I'll go back to that. First of all, I'm just going to go through what I've written. This was just written today, quite quickly, and it's about this spec. Okay, so first of all, it just gives a little introduction to the four spreadsheet tabs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have a little bit of history. The version back in October, and the one in May, and then going back to 2012. Okay. Then we've got the Res basic model, and this I've been using a lot. I don't think you've seen it yet, but it's appearing in quite a few of the main articles I'm making now, and particularly the summary to the book A More Creative Capitalism features this very early on. And so please go through this, read it so as you understand it, and correct anything that's wrong. I then started here, but I haven't really got into this. I'm now, because I wanted to make this video for you, so this here is the video for you, Res version 4. Okay, so I'm just going to talk through this, and this goes through, this goes through these two new pages here that I'm making for ‐ Έρevenue, which is basically how the software will be created. And it doesn't actually take that much. There's only so many variables. You see here where it says var is a variable. In comparison to Villa Secrets, what we're doing, there's another variable, there's another variable. in comparison to Villa sequence, where we've got hundreds and hundreds of variables, this is actually very, very, very simple. It's just what it presents is very dramatic. Okay, so I'm just going to read through this. 2024 and 2025, revenue aid, new input on CMS in red, 1 billion. Okay, so what that is saying is, on here, 2024, we start with this 1 billion there in aid. Okay, so that's what's there. E is 92.5. Oops, I'm going to keep doing that, aren't I? E is there, 92.5, which is reflected on the controller somewhere here. There you go, 92.5. Spins is 8, and you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spins. And that's there, reflected there. And also, what I really am I really would like, if you can think of any reason why this isn't correct. I really have looked at it every single way I can think of, and the principle does seem perfectly correct. If you've got anything that looks you just don't understand, just please let me know. It's not all about the math. The math can be correct, but there could be outside problems. But I think I've covered everything. Certainly supply and demand seems to be covered, all sorts. Let me just, so I get a sip of water. Okay, so, and there we see the spins. Cash flow after 8 spins is 2.6. Okay, we see there 8 spins, and that's the cash flow there, and that's in green. I've just noted it in green so that you can follow it. A is recorded as the law of conservation of revenue, moves to 2025. So cash flow after 8 spins follows the path. All right, follows the path, and then is recorded as LRC, law of conservation of revenue, then moves to 2025 the following years in LCR this year. Let's just follow that. I've made it nice and simple. So we're just following that there, follow the green, and that ends up being there. And the next year it ends up being there, where after this is this plus this plus this equals this. Okay, and after that, this gold figure here goes up to here. Okay, then it follows the spins, and then this figure here is the beginning spin, where there's 5.37 billion in cash flow, to the end spin where there's only 2.8, and we can see that equals 2.4 billion in exports and assets. That's, sorry, imports, not exports, imports and assets. That's the network buying things, either because we want to make something out of them or we want to build something on them. Okay, let's just go back to my notes, and then we've talked about this. Okay, starting in 2025, actually we've talked about this as well. Note, I have added another billion in 2025. Here we go. I keep hitting that button, that's so annoying. So here we are, we're in 2025. Note it also, I put it down there so we can see it easily each year. Yeah, basically I've added a billion in there, and I've added all of these here. Okay. A note of the billions. Note that per res version 3, which you can find here, basically, you see it's got the 3.04, 3.04, a few different ones for it. But what was my point? Oh yeah, there's a lot of importing and exporting going on in the background. I.e., we're making stuff, we're selling it somewhere, and we're buying with it other stuff, and that comes back. So it's basically we're swapping stuff all over the place. But because of comparative advantage, if done well, it basically means if we say for instance, this is our trade with it's our trade with the USA. So that's in fact no, here it's all exports at 250 million. That could be exports of say 5 billion and imports of 5 billion. But by using comparative advantage, one actually makes an extra 250 million each. So both the importer and the exporter record trade surpluses, which is good unless you're trying to dump money. Okay. 2026 sees some changes to aid and other. Notice that I'm displaying it in dark red whenever I make a change, or at least I'm trying to. It's not totally essential, but it helps when reviewing. For example, here, all these have changed, so they've got into a dark red. That's changed. Following year, these three stay the same, so it stays the same, and these have gone into a dark red. The following year, however, instead of these changing from this page of the CMS, once I make the computer, it will come from here. So if this 120, in fact, I can actually, in fact, no, I can't. Basically, yeah, the idea is you could either make a change on this and it'll go here and it'll be in red, or you can make a change on here and it'll appear in blue. So if it's updated, if nothing's happened, in fact, I think I've made the point. Right. Okay. Okay. Moving to the Res software controller. See in column 0, we see. Okay. Sorry. Here we got a warning indicator for from a golden age to a depression. This is illustrated in the manual version, but in general, a depression will see exports and city go as low as 0, but not after 2048, as by this time we expect 50% of trade to be with other res economies. Moving to Res 4 software controller, at 0 we see how depression affects global output estimates. That is here, here, and just in this column here, you can see the way we're simulating a recession this time is for growth to stop, growth to -5, coming back to 2.5, or a depression is for growth to nearly stop, lose a bit, lose a hell of a lot, and then start to come back again. You know, this will actually be a variable, so one will be able to change this, how one wishes to show a recession. Right, okay, so I think that's pretty much okay. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've done. So right now I'm going to, as quickly as I can, go through the spreadsheet that I'm most concerned about, because it's important. Right. Okay. So we start with a figure, which is 5 billion. Here we see the E, which is at 90%. So we times that 5 billion by 90%, gives us 4,500. That is one spin that will have to have been done within 56 days at the beginning of the year, February the 25th. So by February 25th, all of this money will have been spent, every single cent, and 10% will be spent on things that are out of our control. Sometimes the personnel will want to buy things that we don't have, and other times we might want to buy land or whatever, you know. But yeah, so of that 5 billion, 90% goes back to another network company. And if we want to see how that works, we've got to go to Siena Equilibrium 1 and Siena Equilibrium 2, which show how the whole, we can make a nice symmetry, a nice balance. So as actually, we're just continually making stuff, or buying stuff. Right, so look, I'm just going to go to the math. 5 times 90%, that means by the end of February 25th, 4.5 billion has been paid from one company to another. One set of companies to another set of companies, which are in fact the same set of companies. And so, starting from the 26th of Feb, that 4.5 billion is again spent, 90% of it, again with companies in the network. And this happens again and again and again and again. And each time it happens, we can see the amount of cash flow gets less and the amount of revenue gets less. Now, this is important because we see this revenue here appears, no, this here appears here. This is what's carried over. So here's the 8th spin. Basically, this is the 9th spin, which goes to the following year. So in the same way that this is transferred to here, and this is transferred to here, this is then transferred to here, which we see here. Okay? And then this is adding this, this, and this. Revenue is this, this, and this. And then this revenue is in turn placed up here. And you can see now we're starting with slightly more, which is great. And that makes slightly more. Note that this cash flow is just the sum of all of these. And where there could be a mistake is that I have extended this, but I haven't extended the full full line. It may be something like this. I think I've got it, but that could be a mistake. Okay, so there you go. That's the cash flow. That is what is being spent. Note that in general, GDP seems to be about half of what cash flow is. So that's year's GDP is cash flow times 50%. Government spending is 18.75% of that, so that's just over 5 billion. So the government gets 5 billion's worth of cash flow from what was starting at about 5 billion. So yeah, that's just great for those guys. Labour is paid 25% of revenue, of cash flow, which is a large amount to pay labour, according to various textbooks, but we're including some of the profit in there. So it's making less profit, paying more in labour. But 2/3 of labour actually goes back as in housing, which in cars, and in some welfare to the staff's villages, i.e. where the staff's family back in the village, and if they don't have a family back in the village, it goes to some other village and they're just doing a good thing. But anyway, that explains those two. And sorry, let's just have a look. On the left, we've got more. You see there's more over here. Here's aid. Here's AGOA exports. That's exports to the USA. And in fact, this should be comparative advantage money made from the exports to the USA, not exports to the USA. But anyway, EBA is the same thing for Europe. Africa exports. Other exports, Asia mainly. Sales to Malawi. Real estate sold, that would be the first city, which would It's Angel City 1 and a network city. And yeah, so that's real estate sold. There are developments within that city, malls and marinas within that city, and other. That adds up to this 2.1. Here we're starting in the second year with a company, we'll call it, organisation rather, we'll call this the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. And we'll have made a deal with them to put in $1 billion, and they will we'll have worked it out, and everyone will be very, very happy. We're happy to have their money. They should be extremely happy about the amount of output they get in return and the potential for that to be worth an awful lot more in the future. And it's basically a 10-year contract at $1 billion, but whenever there's a recession, they can pause. With an option, once that has reached 10 years, a section within that city, the middle section, which would probably initially be all solar panels, will be turned into the downtown with skyscrapers and stuff, and then that'll be more than $1 billion a year. That'll go to $4 billion a year or something. We'll see that later. I'm just trying to explain bits as I can. Okay, so let's just start going. Okay, so here we go. 2024, 2025, 2026. I've added 2 new spins, and crucially, I had to remember to change this spreadsheet because it would have been here, but because I had 2 spins, it's there, and it's right in this scenario, but it could be wrong. So that could be one to check each time. This one here, this one here, and this one here. This one here, yeah. Okay, so what's going on here? We've got a little bit of movement over here. At this point, I hadn't yet. In fact, no, there is no movement. I just kept it the same. I quite often keep things the same. Here we've got the second year. Now, this is probably where we're most likely to find a mistake. It's the second year of $1 billion. So when it gets to 11, that disappears because they'll have finished that phase, that 10-year phase. We won't worry about the second phase because I bring it in later. Okay, so 2027, what's happening here? I think I'm just letting it run here. No changes. It's just increasing. Have I changed E somewhere? Yes, hang on. Yeah, okay, there we go. Because that's changed, wherever we see a change, we want to see a red on this spreadsheet. On the other one, it's sometimes blue. But in this one, whenever there's a change, there's a red. Okay, so... And we can see here, we got that fourth, third, second year. And I think this year I decided not to put one in for some reason. Yep, so that revenue is this plus this plus this. Told you that already. Okay, we're carrying on. And we can see that the revenue is building up. Let's try and find this on the controller. So, what this is all various different things which divide the divide the cash flow into 40 different columns. One of which I particularly follow, which is the Spartan homes. And here we're seeing okay, we've got the build cost times. Okay, that's the amount of money we've got in 2024. We times that, well, we divide it actually. We divide it by the 100,000 per house, and that gives us 19,222 houses. That is there. And what I've done is I've just cheated a bit, and I've just increased it by a certain amount. And you can see when I change that, when it goes less, it's a red. When it's higher, it's a green. And the way I've done the due diligence, I suppose you'd call it, the double check, is to then just go over here. And I think this is, yeah, that is the amount of cash flow expected that year. Hang on, let me find this. E15. Yeah, that's the cash flow for that first year. And what's this then? Okay, that's it. I've done the growth like this. And then what I've done is I've made sure that this figure is less than this figure, and this figure comes from this spreadsheet. So basically, no. Well, I've lost myself here. Yeah, so here we go. So basically, yeah, this figure has to be less than this figure, and as long as this figure is less than this figure, my estimate for housing is okay. There will be more being able to made than I have put down. So if we go down, and we see here, by 2050, that's 24 million people housed, if there's 4 people per house. And you know, that's the reason. That's the excuse as to now. I don't know if it's an excuse. This is the reason why I can now look at more lofty targets like South Africa or even the Philippines, based on the fact that this will house so many people in good housing. Okay, so that's how this works. What am I looking for here? And here we see the E in there, and some. Here we're looking at jobs, the amount of jobs created by 2049, 30 million jobs. So this is, you see, it sounds ludicrous, but the math, as far as I can see, is right. Plus, the way they increased the rate, the revenue, the reserve rate, RRT, reserve rate technique used by the US, used by Europe, used by loads of people, increases the money supply by 20%. So 20%, sorry, 900%. So you know, Res is only doing that same thing, but in a different way. Okay, so let's get back to where we were. Where were we? We were 2029. Okay, 2 new spins. And we're just seeing everything following through. And we're seeing here, the more cash flow we have, the more houses we can buy, and the more other things we can do. So cash flow is great. Okay. At 2030, no more aid. At this point, the network's doing well enough for it to be able to do without having any aid. And aid could be better deployed at a new network being created in another country. You know, so no more aid after this point. So we can see that's in red. But I think it's gone up to 93 now, and that's... Where does it start at 92? There we go. Let's see. Doing it as I go. I'm aware that this video is going to be quite long, and by the time you've watched it, quite a bit of time will be taken up. But I'm doing it as I go, and it's good for me to do this actually. Okay, so there we go, 93, no more aid. Let's see. Really, I should actually highlight all of these there in red because they've all changed. Okay, highlighting and not highlighting is not a major problem. No one's going to say, oh, your theory's crap because you've highlighted something in red whereas it shouldn't have been. But it's the math. The math, as long as the math, you know, it's this one here. Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. This one following on to this one. Okay, so carrying on. I'm just going to carry on now. I'm not going to bother making any things in red for now. Okay, here we go. Recession warning. Done here is I've just... What have I done? Have I done this manually? Okay, sometimes I do it manually. Sometimes I do it... Yeah, I've done it manually here. Minus 50%. And I've minus 50% from there. Okay. Recession, we're in a recession now, so it's minus 75%. And then sometimes I'll do it like this, which would be the original figure. Oh. Equals that times 25%. See, same thing. This I'm using more so as when when he does the programming, he can easily see what it is, how I want the variable to work. I'm just gonna pop that one in green so as I can remember I've made that change there. Right, okay. Recession ending, so it dies down a bit. And note that what we do as soon as see, we're here, we're at 95E spin 12. As soon as we get sight of a recession and this income drops here and the income drops here, so the revenue decreases, we start to spin more. Up to 14, and that has gone up to 96. Now here we go up to 16, 97, and 98%, and 20. And even though there's been a recession, what's the cash flow? 116. First year of a recession stays about the same. That's fine as long as it doesn't go down. The full-blown recession is on and it's still holding steady. And as soon as that recession starts to go away, because we've ramped up this spin, it's got up to 160, which is a massive jump from 117. And what I've done first of all is I've because it's expanded, I now want to bring it back in. So in case there's another recession, it can expand again. Albeit later on I do it a different way of just spinning more, but that's potentially because later on we're so used to spinning that adding spinning from 20 to 30 is no problem at all, but doing it at this early stage is you know, could be and probably is harder. So we can see here it tailing back to 16, tailing back to 12. Just check. Yeah, that's still fine. Back to 97. Back to 96 and 12. But whilst this has been decreasing, the revenue has been increasing. So basically, one can decrease spin and E if revenue and city are increasing. If one wants to put oneself in a position where one can add spin and E again for a recession. kind of like government bringing interest rates up now, which there's a certain argument that they should do, so as if there's another recession they can lower them again. But then of course there's the argument that increasing interest rates could cause another recession. So yeah, the current mechanism for controlling recessions is buggered because interest rates are now zero. This is why the RES is better. Is better economics. It's new economics. Okay, so there we go. Back to that 12 spin. You can see we're carrying on here. Yeah, I think these are the figures that could be the most wrong. If that should have been 9.5, 10.5. Actually, that 10.5 has gone to 11, I think, and then that's only half. So yeah, I think these are this is the area where we're most likely to see a mistake. Yeah, so definitely focus on this as your primary. I mean, I've looked at, you know, you've seen me check them as I go. What am I doing? This seems to always be okay. Okay, so yeah, so anything here, and I think like I have done, whenever you want to make a change or make a change, make it in the green. Okay, so Krissy's changes are in green. There's a few things in green, but not a lot. So any change, and please do make the change. Don't highlight it in green for me to see that I need to make a change. If, say, for instance, this 500 is wrong and it should be 0, don't highlight it in green like that. Make the correction and then highlight it in green so I can see where the mistake has been made and then corrected. Right, okay, now so I'm really going to fly through the rest of this. We're doing the same thing, we're increasing, but now we've got to slow down predicted again, and we haven't managed to go below 97, and we don't really need to. Slow down predicted immediately goes from, picks up 2 spin. In fact, we've got it down to 95 and 12. So as soon as the slowdown is predicted by the Angel Wing software, E goes up to, and spin goes up to. The recession's in, and now we start seeing the discounting, not the discounting, the lowering here. And I've boosted it up to 99 and spin 18. And we can see, even though we're hitting a recession, we're actually having the largest gains in cash flow. 451 to 580, keeping that there at 590, which isn't bad considering we've lost all of our E. Look here, nothing. Oh, hang on a sec, this, oh yes, yeah, no, I've basically done that by removing this figure here. Okay, suppose that makes sense. Yeah, see, no income at all other than the spun revenue, and because we've kicked it to E100 and 20 spins, we're now managing to keep from lowering cash flow. 580, 591. I don't know how we've actually increased cash flow. That could be indicative of a slight mistake somewhere, because if you've got 20 spin, I'm not going to worry about that too much. Hang on, let me think about it. Okay, there's different 18 there. Ah, yeah. Okay, there's an extra 2. I'm just going to trust the math is right. As long as these things are right. Okay. Recession ending. These come down. But what I do now, and this was to agree to prove a point, but I just keep it at the high E and the high spin, and we see this cash flow churning up. See, just a little while ago, we were 580. After the recession, we're 1.1. That's more than doubled in 4 years over a period when there was a recession. In fact, a depression. Goes up to 1.6. Goes up to 2.27. At which point, the point has been proved, and I actually lower it the next year. Let's see how that plays out on the controller. This is at 2050. Okay, there we see that growth. And should have somewhere. In fact, no, I don't have it. I have it here lower down. We can see it continues at the lower, and you can see there's been a 82% decrease in cash flow, and that's been deliberate, because the idea was it was spinning so much that it was just becoming out of, and it wasn't necessary. There's somewhere here, there's a figure of how much this is versus global. There we go. Is it up there? Okay. At this point, it's hit over 1% of global GDP, based on future growth of those figures, which is higher than is needed for. So it's gone down there. I've deliberately made it go down, and then what we see is 10 years of pretty much stability, with the GDP actually going down because of that high growth, but the output, what's being made, cash flow, staying pretty much the same. When I first did this, I wasn't including inflation. My thought was, well, if we include inflation and growth on one side to GDP, we should do it to the other side. Therefore, all of these figures here should be increased by the same amount that global GDP should be. But I know some people would probably think that's a bit of a cop-out, so I started to include growth, and we can see here how that share of global GDP is. I'm just going to work through these figures for a second. This is, this 10 years is the 10 years of stability. Let's just see it. I think it's starting there, the decade of stability, and then that goes down to the decade of acquisition, where here I'm buying a load of stuff, 174 billion, buying a load of stuff from other countries, maybe buying land, maybe starting a new network in the USA or anywhere, and it loses massively about the revenue. It's back down to from 181 there to 53, and this is just an experiment. And then we just carry on with a high E. Yeah, that's it. It loses loads over that 1 year, buys a load of stuff, then it just hoards and works until all that money has been made up. That's 99. It's going up to 146. That's the 192. and then it's back there again, 238, and there we go. Again, a massive buy, 218, and that demolishes the revenue, the LRC, the Law of Conservation of Revenue, only to be built up again. And this time I've worked at 99%, and we start to see this has been added. This is revenue, the first bit of revenue minus the last bit of cash flow. First bit of revenue, last bit of cash flow. And that's basically imports and assets, which are reflected somewhere. Let me see. Imports, there we go. We start to reflect them there. There we go. Yeah, that's where those are. Hey, no. That's where those figures end up. I only started adding them at 2050. I only started adding the exports and creating the trade balance at 2070. And this trade balance is, to a degree, it's useful information, but it's not perfectly accurate, because as I mentioned earlier, we'll be trying to use this imports will be balanced by comparative advantage on the rest of the trade, and that will be just money for jam, basically. Okay, so the last 10 years, what's going on? Okay, interesting. The decade of acquisition, the second huge payout. This time I've just designed it to go to Malawi, just buying whatever else is left that hasn't been bought into the network. But that will spread through the country, and whoever gets paid that money, they're going to be, rich as hell, and they'll be buying stuff, and they'll be buying stuff often in their own country. So this money sort of comes back to a degree. It's as a sales to Malawi bonus. Okay, the last 10 years. I have gone for another depression, and you can see cash flow stays the same. I've done it. I've done this two ways. 2076. Let's go there. 2076. It's 2076 and the 2076 part 2. So this is the first one, and this is the second one, and there's a big difference between them, and I can't remember what it is. Okay. Yeah, this gets complicated. In this case, E has stayed at 100%. And of course the network does great. It actually, in the middle of a depression, increases its cash flow. But I've done another technique where it's basically dumped as much cash as it can. Basically the same as we use for the decade of acquisition. Figures here, figures here. Figures here, and this was to see how that would react on a global scale. And what am I looking for here? I think it's yeah, here we go. Okay, so if we work in standard economics and that is spent on imports plus another 50 networks. That would be 50 other networks in poor countries and 50 virtual networks in rich companies. averaging out 50, all dumping all their money, as much as all buying, only makes a 3% difference, which fair enough, would be enough to solve some of the world's problems, but nowhere near as much as I had hoped for. And it's not worth it. It's not worth it, risking all one's capital for a 3% global shift in the middle of a recession, which the whole world could lose 10-20%. No, but if the rest of the world, the money that was exported, the cash flow that was exported, was done to countries who had economic zones that were themselves using rares, then we can spread to the world that is not fully networked. 55% of the world's global GDP can be put into the world, which is far, far, far more than enough to cover any worries of hyperinflation or anything like that. So this is the hyperinflation argument, and it's also the argument for countries like the USA and pretty much everywhere else to start their own res economic network zones in their own countries, so that if shit hits the fan, we can deploy this method. Okay. Okay, and lastly, I mop it up with kicking it out with a little bit more high 99.9E spin 32, just so as we can show some really big gains in the last few years. And what we can see here is, because of those last 4 years growth, which is growth of 93% in 4 years, unheard of in human history. No, back. There we go, that figure there, 2.56% of the global economy made by Malawi in this simulation in 2080. Okie dokie. So, main worry. My main worry is, am I doing anything wrong? Am I doing anything that doesn't make sense, that you think, no, that doesn't make sense? Let me know about that. And the second main worry is these figures here. Are they always correct? Okay, I'm going to stop this video because it's, how long is it now? I can't see without stopping it. Okay, well, thanks for everything this year, Krissy. Have a good Christmas, and yeah, let's try and get this working. Okay.